Hey everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another video here on my YouTube channel. Today we have the Pink and Main October 2020 Falling For You card kit. I made 6 cards with it, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. This kit is not available anymore, but I will have linked down below some of the other products that I used. And hopefully this video will just give you some ideas. Alright, so let's get started. Our first card's going to be a fun fold. I have some of the cardstock that came in the kit. This is more of a layering cardstock, but I'm going to add so many layers to it that it'll make it a lot more sturdy. And so that was cut down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and scored at 5 1/2 inches. The next piece was some of the patterned paper, and I cut that down to be 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it would fit perfectly on the inside. This next piece is about 3 1/4 inches, and it is 4 inches, I believe. So I'm going to cut down the front part of my panel. It's important to score it first and then chop off the piece that you need. And so then now I can kind of take a look at those, and those will fold like that. This next piece was just over 6 inches, and I'm going to score that at like 3 1/8 inches. So it's, I guess it's what, 2 1/2 inches or 3 inches by, and you know what, this isn't like perfect measurements. You don't have to perfectly measure it. You can kind of decide how big you want your pieces to be and just kind of work from there. But that's how big mine were. And then I had another piece of cardstock that, a little, or pattern paper that I had fit down or cut down to fit on the front of that. And as it is, I had it a little too long, so I'm gonna have to trim off just a tiny sliver of that. So then all of our pieces are going to be ready to go to be assembled into a little fun fold card. And we'll attach a few of the pieces now just using some liquid glue, because I know exactly where those are going to go and they aren't going to change. And we'll attach our piece on the inside, and then we'll attach the piece to the outside. And I won't attach down my orange piece just yet, because I want to make sure before I do that all my pieces will fit on there correctly. But this is how it's going to go. You'll have that fold in there, so when you open it, you'll have that one little fold, and it's just a cute little card. I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments on some of the leftover craft cardstock that came in the kit that I had. And I'm stamping that with some VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink, and then I'm going to trim that down using my guillotine trimmer. This is going to go on the outside of that orange piece that I have. So this is the front of it, and I love that little sentiment. Such a cute little sentiment. So yeah, we'll just trim that down with the guillotine trimmer, and then we'll get ready to do some stamping. So I'd already stamped one, and I've just pulled out inks that would go with the patterned paper that we have here, and I'm stamping it right onto that craft cardstock. And I like that there are several options for the way that you stamp these. So I stamped this first piece, and then I'm going to stamp the second part of it. And I don't really care if it lines up perfectly. If you are concerned about that, you could probably put it inside of a MISTI or a mini MISTI or something like that. I don't care that it's a little off center on some of these, but you can stamp the veins over the top. You can also stamp the solid images and then stamp the veins over the top, or stamp the solid images and then stamp the next, most solid image over the top of that. It's just a lot of possibilities with these, and I just think they're so much fun. I'm going to get the matching dies that go with these and tack that down with a little bit of purple tape, and then run that through my little die cutting machine. And then we'll have these 3 leaves all ready to go. I'll attach my sentiment down to my front panel. I'm going to do that a little bit crooked, just because, no real reason. And then I'll attach the inside piece. And the fun thing about using that plaid background is that I can kind of line it up a little bit straight using the plaid on the inside. So there we go. We'll just get that in there. And so you have a little bit of room to write to your recipient on the 2 of those flaps. And then we're going to decide how we want to put our leaves on there. And once we get that all figured out, we'll grab some foam tape to do so. So I'm going to put the foam tape directly onto my piece so that I don't have issues with it going past the flap, because obviously if it goes past the flap, then you're just going to end up closing your card and you won't be able to open it. So I'm just putting the little foam squares right onto the flap itself, and then I'll stick my leaves over the top of that. And then as a final bit of embellishment, we're going to grab out the glitter enamel dots. I just love those. And we're just going to put some of the blue ones down on top of here. So we'll just grab the ones we want, stick those down with our little jewel picker. Oh, this isn't a jewel picker, this is a pick, just like a paper piecing pick, paper piercer. And then we'll just put several of those all over the place. That's half the battle for me, honestly, is trying to decide exactly where I'm going to put things so that it's visually appealing to the eye. Because sometimes I get started and I'm just like, what have I done? But oftentimes I use a lot and it ends up working out just fine. So there we have our first card, this fun little fold, lots of room to write to your recipients, and it's just a cute little way to send a card. For card number 2, we're going to start with our stamping, and we're going to do the rock and roll technique. And if you've watched me recently, it seems like with leaves especially, I love this technique. So I'm starting out with a gray ink. That gray ink is actually called Woof. And then we're going to come in with some Grrr that I'm rocking my stamp in. So basically I'm just trying to get some color on the edge of the stamp. It's fun to do with these solid images, and it just brings in a whole nother color to it. I'm going to bring in another stamp, and this one's going to be the solid, I guess like, it almost looks like an eye. And then I'll bring in 2 more colors. We're going to bring in this Slippery When Wet and Traffic Cone. So we'll start with the yellow, and don't worry about like real contamination. As long as you start with your lighter color first, you're not really going to have a problem. So I started with the yellow, then I went into the orange, and as you can tell, I don't always do the perfect job stamping, which I honestly don't mind. I feel like stamps like this are a little bit forgiving, but then again, it's all personal preference. So it might really bother you that it's not perfectly stamped. But for me, it doesn't really bother me. And if it does bother you, then I would highly suggest you use like a Misty or something like that. So I'm just going to stamp these right over the top of that. This one's a little easier to line up. As you can tell, I didn't perfectly get that one stamped, but I'll try again, and it works. And then this one I don't always get perfect. As you can tell, it's kind of off center, and I really don't mind that. And the die itself is actually fairly forgiving too. I mean, it leaves a little bit of a border around it, so I don't worry about that so much. And so I went ahead and ran those through my die cutting machine, got all those die cut and ready to be put on the card. Our card base is some of the blue cardstock that came in the kit. It's just a gorgeous teal blue. And so I cut that down to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored it at 4.25 inches. And then my pattern paper I cut down to 4 inches by 5.25, so it'll leave a nice little blue border. I'll stamp my sentiment using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I'm going to trim that down using my guillotine trimmer. Just lining that up inside there. I use the little grids in there to help keep it lined up and straight. And then I'll cut that at an angle, that one edge. And then we'll start assembling things. So I'll put down my pattern paper using some of that liquid glue. And then I'm going to just sort of position the leaves around it. I don't have the sentiment attached just yet. This is just helping me to put down the pieces that I need to put down. Some of them are going to go behind, some of them are going to go on top. And so I just want to make sure that I'm doing the ones that go behind first before I actually attach that sentiment. And yeah, I'm leaving some of the leaves poking off the side. That gives the illusion that there's more going on that right-hand side. So it's a little bit more visually appealing. But you do what makes you happy. That's the beauty of creativity and art. So I'll just keep putting those leaves behind there. I'm going to save 3 of them though. 3 of those leaves are going to go on the inside of the card. I'll just glue those to the inside along with one of the leftover pieces of this patterned paper. Now I'll attach down my sentiment. And then those last 2 leaves that I'm going to put on the outside, those are going to be on the outside of the sentiment itself. I guess it really didn't matter that I cut that at an angle because it's completely covered, but yeah, whatever. Then I'll flip that over and cut off the excess that we have. I do want to add some embellishment, so I'm going to grab some of the sequins that came in the sequin pack, and I'll just use my crystal katana along with my liquid glue to put all those down. And then, like I said, I'll attach the leftover leaves and one of the pieces of pattern paper to the inside, and that's going to finish off our second card. I love the boldness of that VersaFine Clair for the veins on this one. My plan wasn't to make 2 cards that were exactly the same, but it just worked out that way. So I've got some pixie spray that I'm using with the stencil that came in the kit. I'm just going to spray that on the back. Make sure you do that in a very well ventilated area. I have some white cardstock that's cut down to 4.25 inches by 5.5 inches, so it's the whole front of an A2 size card. And I'll just tack down that stencil right over the top of that. My plan, like I said, wasn't to have 2 of these. I originally wanted to just do purple, but I had grabbed out the yellow by mistake, wasn't even paying attention, and I grabbed my little mini Ergo blending brush and just started blending. And by that point I was like, yeah, it's okay. Let's make two. So I'm going to bring that color all the way across the panel from both ends. It'll be a little bit lighter in the center, which is fine. Somebody had said that this stencil reminded them of like rolling wheat fields, and I thought that was so cool. There's so much movement on this stencil, which is just neat. So it could be like the wind, or it could be like somebody had said, rolling wheat fields. It's just beautiful. I'm going to bring in some Glimmer paste. This is some Nuvo Glimmer paste, and this is the color Golden Crystal. I'm going to spread it in from the left-hand side, and then I'm actually going to do the same thing on the other side. I don't know exactly what I was envisioning, but this is just kind of what I went with. And then I'm going to put all the leftover back into the container, close that up, and clean up my mess, because otherwise this stuff will, like, just, it's on there. If you don't get it off, it's on there. So here's where I'll do the second one. We're going to go through the exact same process, but I'm going to bring in a different color after I clean off my little brush. So like I said, we're bringing in a purple color. It's called Triple Berry. And it's just like a beautiful purpley pink color. And so I'll do the same thing, just bringing that color in on both sides. And then the color of Glimmer paste that I've picked out is called PLUM Spinel. Oof. Y'all know I can butcher the language, that's for sure. So I'm not exactly sure, but I will have it linked down below if I can find it. It's just a really beautiful color. And so I'm going to bring that in only from the left-hand side. Originally, I was going to do the same thing as the other, but this one I just decided we'd take a different route and only bring it in from that left-hand side. And just kind of spread it out. I didn't want it to be perfect. I wanted it to look a little bit more organic. And then again, clean up my mess and clean everything off. And then I'll set those off to the side to dry. I will end up stamping 8 of these little leaf combos, and I'm using a blue color. This is called Remember Me. And then for the veins, I'm going to stamp that using that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink that I've been using this whole time, because I really like that dark contrast. And I didn't line these up perfectly either, but again, I just said, I've said before, I don't mind that. I kind of like that look, that it might be a little bit off center. And so like I said, I'll use 8 of them. And then I'll run that through my die cutting machine with the matching die, and then we'll start getting ready to assemble. I had gone ahead and stamped hello onto a couple of those little like chipboard stickers, little decorative pieces, and I wasn't exactly sure which one I wanted to use where, exactly how I wanted to put these on there. I did cut down some of the orange glitter cardstock, and then I'll attach that down using some liquid glue. Now putting it over the top of the Glimmer paste is going to be a little bit of a challenge. You may want to put something down heavy on top of that, and it will eventually stick, but you wouldn't want to use a tape runner. It's not going to stick if you try to use that. Foam squares work pretty well. Liquid glue does work. It just takes a minute. But yeah, so using that over the top of glitter cardstock or even Glimmer paste makes it a little bit more challenging. So much so that when I tried to attach down the sticker, I wasn't thinking, and yeah, it doesn't stick. So I grabbed foam tape or foam squares, and I ended up liking that so much better anyway. But here I'll try and attach down one of the little decorative elements, and I realize it's just not going to stick. So we'll grab foam squares, and like I said, I actually should have put down more than just the 5 that I did. I probably should have put down 6, but it's okay. It's on there pretty good. And then I'll just tack that down. And then I had trimmed this panel down just on the longer side, so it's actually 4 inches by 5.5 inches. So when I attach that to my card base, there's going to be a little bit of that purple border showing on the top and the bottom, and I really love that because it shows off that beautiful mulberry cardstock. And then I'll attach one of the leftovers to the inside, and I'll do the same thing for my yellow card. And then that's going to finish off both of them. I actually really like how both of them turned out. This is not how I had envisioned it in my mind, but I am happy with the end result. So there are cards 3 and 4. For card number 5, we're going to make a slimline, so I took the orange cardstock that came in the kit and I cut 4 inches off of it. That would leave me with a base that was 7 inches by 8.5 inches and then scored at 3.5 inches. And then the leftover piece I actually cut down to 3.5 inches. And then I cut it in half because I knew that the whole piece wasn't going to fit inside of the embossing folder that came in the kit, and I really wanted to use that. So I'll show you a way that you can use it on slimlines no problem. So I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine using my manufacturer's instructions, and then I'll end up with this beautiful pattern. And so I did it on both pieces, and then I can just piece that on there, and then I have this blue piece of pattern paper that I'll stick over the top, and no one's the wiser, if you know what I'm saying, that those pieces aren't one piece. I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto some white cardstock, then I'll trim that down using my guillotine trimmer. And then we'll get ready to actually start doing some assembly here in a second. So I'm going to attach the pieces using some liquid glue just to the card base. And it fits on there just perfectly. And then I'll attach down my bottom section as well using that same liquid glue. And yeah, obviously there's a seam there, but that's where my little cover is going to go. And I love that beautiful teal with the orange. It's just makes it pop, which, you know, that's why they're complementary colors, I guess. So we'll stick that down. It's obviously longer, so I'll wait for that to dry and then I'll trim off that piece later. But we're going to stamp our leaves. I'm going to use that same yellow ink that I was using before, and I'm going to stamp the solid image this time. I'll do that 3 times, and then I'll stamp my veins over the top of it using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It's just a nice crisp black ink. It does stay wet for a second though, so be careful rubbing your fingers across it. And then I'll trim off the excess from my card base, and now I'll start assembling the leftover pieces. I'll put my sentiment down, and then I will attach down my leaves using that same liquid glue. You could probably use foam tape if you wanted, but I'm going to add some dimension by adding some of those glitter enamel dots to the front here. And I'll use my paper piercer to pick those up and then just start attaching those around my sentiment. It looked great before, but it's just fun and neat to see a card really come to life with a little bit of extra embellishment. So I'll just pop those down. And then once I'm done with that, that's actually going to finish off our card. So there is card number 5. I love that embossed background. So pretty. Our 6th and final card for today is another slimline. I am going to take one of the pattern papers and I'm going to cut that down to be 3 inches by 6 inches, and we're going to use that on our slimline. I've done this before, I just kind of cover up the seam, but I pulled out one of the slimline dies. This is the Blessings slimline, and I was actually quite impressed that so many of the slimline dies would work so well with this kit in particular. There's also the Leafy slimline die, and then there's also the Leafy stencil that would have worked really well too. But I'm going to take that border and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine over the top of that glitter cardstock because I thought that would be a beautiful border. And I'll take a strip of some of the blue, and I'm going to use 2 of the little like marquee sign dies that are in this Blessings slimline die, and I'll run that through my little die cutting machine. And one of them says Happy Fall and Hello Friend. I thought it would be fun to combine those on the outside, or the outside of my card. I'll put a little glue on the border here, and then I'm going to attach down my pattern paper to it. Like I said, it doesn't fit perfectly, obviously, but that is okay. I'm going to work with it. And we're going to have, like I said, a little bit of a seam, but we're going to just work around that. It's just a fun way to use your stuff. And then I'll trim off that excess. I'll stamp out all the leaves that I want with their matching veins, run those through my die cutting machine, and then we'll attach down our little marquee pieces to the front of our card panel. I haven't attached this to our card base. Our card base is some of that brown cardstock that you see over there. And I'll have down below linked the pieces that would work with this. Just some fun fall products like the Leafy slimline die, this Blessings die, and then also the Leafy stencil as well. I'll also attach the pieces that go inside the little marquee, so the O and the D and the R, all those little pieces will get attached in there, and then we'll start assembling the rest of the card using some more of that liquid glue. Here's where I'm covering up that seam. It's not super visible, but it'll definitely not be visible after we do this. That pattern paper will just look like it belonged there, which is so nice, right? And then we'll attach the other 2 leaves on the other side, and then those final 2 leaves that I have will go on the inside of the card. You could save all those little letters and use those for something else. And then I'm going to attach this down to my card base now. There'll be a nice little brown border all the way around it. It's quite the fall card. I love that it says, "Hello friend, happy fall." And then I'm going to grab the sequins that were in the kit and I'll attach those down. I was pretty liberal putting those all over the place, but it ends up making a very fun front to a card. And so that's going to finish off card number 6. I want to go ahead and take a look at all the cards that I made today. I would love to know what you think, which one was your favorite. If you did in fact have a favorite, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section down below. That's always my favorite part about making all these cards, honestly, is I love hearing what you guys have to say about them. If you did like this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button and maybe even think about subscribing if you haven't done so before. And as always, I just appreciate all the love and support you guys leave. You guys are really awesome. So anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.